In June 1953, the Triumph TR2 made head car of its price. Powered by a modified version of the already famous Vanguard engine, the new car began to attract the attention of keen rally drivers and clubmen everywhere. And in 1954, a work-sponsored team of 3 TR2s made its debut in the French Rallye Des Alpes. Recognized as one of the toughest European events, the route of 2,200 miles led over the mountains of France, Italy, Austria, Germany and Switzerland. From Cortina d'Ampezzo, where overnight the competitors had spent a well-earned rest, the rally in those days set out on the circuit of the Dolomites. The struggle for seconds in the Alps is probably the most rigorous test which driver and car can undergo, and the constant strain on gearbox, transmission and brakes is as unending as the serpentine roads themselves. This was the new Triumph's first attempt on the, and as the field thinned out with almost every mountain pass, competitors realized the strength of the newcomer's challenge. Against a time schedule calling for the Alpine's average speeds, there's little time for competitors to concentrate too much on the beauty of the mountains. Of 82 starters, less than 40 were still on the road, and the majority of them were in various degrees of trouble. The Triumph TR2s, on their first outing in the Alpine, won 2 of its most coveted awards, the Team Prize and a Coupe des Alpes for Maurice Gatsonides and Robbie Slaughtermarker. Le Mans 1955, then as now, the most exacting sports and grand touring car race in the international calendar. Mike Hawthorne, Jaguar's #1 driver, faced the formidable challenge from Germany. Sterling Moss was sharing the #1 Mercedes with Fangio, and wherever Mercedes went, team manager Alfred Neubauer went too. Right from the start, the giants battled for the lead, whilst the Triumph settled down to lap steadily according to their prearranged plan. With less than 2.5 hours gone, at 6:26 precisely, Lebec's Mercedes hit Lance Macklin's Austin Healey, and the flaming wreckage of the German car plunged into the dense crowd of spectators. The 1955 race had brought with it the worst disaster in motor racing history. Drivers, unaware of the magnitude of the tragedy, continued with the job in hand, and Ken Richardson took over the Triumph for his 3-hour spell. But at Tertre Rouge, Les Brook overdid it, and Triumph #68 was firmly embedded in the sand. The Dixon-Sanderson Triumph #28 had been lapping consistently at 90 miles an hour, with the Richardson-Hadley car close behind. But Leslie Brooks' muscular efforts were rewarded, and soon all 3 Triumphs were running once more. The Mercedes team was withdrawn during the night, and the winning Jaguar of Mike Hawthorne and Ivor Bueb set up a new record distance. The 3 production model Triumph TR2s accomplished exactly what they had set out to do. 3 entered and 3 finished, creditably and without mechanical failure. 1956, The Alpine and the new 100-mile-an-hour TR3s tackled the 30-mile section across the Vivione, considered by some the most treacherous pass of all. On the rough and loosely surfaced road, the car is on the slide for virtually the whole time, and in the blinding dust, it's all too easy to finish up like Jimmy Ray did. On through the valleys of the Dolomites, the same relentless urgency against roads rarely straight, never flat, and frequently unsurfaced. But young Paddy Hopkirk in his Works TR3 revelled in what reminded him of the wilder tracks of his native circuit of Ireland. The unforgettable Cat brothers, too, were part of the team, and the Triumphs were out in force, determined to repeat their success of the previous Alpine rally by carrying off the team award. For although Ken Richardson had retired during the first stage, the 5 remaining TR3s were running unpenalized. Maurice Gatsonides, striving for his 3rd Coupe des Alpes, had time to stop at the summit of the Falzarego and compare notes with teammates Willie Cave and Paddy Hopkirk. The choking dust of the unsurfaced roads proved to be the undoing of the entire Renault factory team, but the TR3s kept soldiering on. For the first time since the war, the Alpine route ran eastwards to Yugoslavia, along the beautiful Dalmatian coast and on to Zagreb. Westwards again, over the Julian Alps to Italy and lovely Lake Misurina. But there was still the Stelvio. The 8-mile climb to 9,000 feet was once again a special section with a maximum time set for each class for a flying ascent to the summit. There were bonus marks for the fastest times, and the Triumphs were all out for what they could get, and it was Maurice Gatsonides who made the fastest time in his class. All 5 TR3s were still running unpenalized. Driven by weary men, but in excellent mechanical order, there was little doubt that all would finish. And in 1956, the Triumphs won more awards than any single team in the history of the event, and the silverware was a fair measure of their phenomenal success. With the first 5 places in the class, the team awards, best aggregate times on the special tests, and 5 Coupe des Alpes, the team celebrated their overwhelming victory in traditional style. It was indeed triumph in the Alps. And Tom Wisdom introduces his daughter Anne to the sport in which she too is to earn distinction. With continued competition successes, the Triumphs became firm favorites with enthusiasts everywhere, and in 1957 a party of 74 Americans flew on a charter flight to London Airport to collect the car of their choice, the TR3. This was part of a first-ever package deal trip to Europe, which included a 2,000-mile journey through Britain and the continent over routes on which the TRs had already distinguished themselves in international competition. But let not the novice delude himself into thinking that international rallying is easy. Even the most experienced rally driver, when working to the absolute limit, can miscalculate with startling results. Fortunately, on this occasion, no one was hurt. Of course, really fast and consistent cornering is the key, but it's all too easy to lose the lot. Only a driver who has done it knows how it feels. And when rain comes to the circuit, technique comes to the fore. Again, no harm was done, except perhaps to the blood pressure. The 1959 Alpine, and again the Stelvio, perhaps the greatest pass of them all. This time it was a regularity test, but so high were the speeds involved that for most people it was flat out anyway. The Triumph TR3, with its short wheelbase and reserve of power, was ideally suited for this type of climb. But a slight error of judgment by Anne Hall put her a critical 5 seconds the wrong side of the target. Making its debut in international competition, the Triumph Herald was more than holding its own against the mountains and the clock. For the third consecutive year, the Triumph TRs won their class, with de la Jeunesse first and Slaughtermarque a close second. For the newest stablemate, the Triumph Herald, driven by Tiny Lewis and Tony Nash, a Coupe des Alpes, a rare distinction for any car on its first appearance in a classic event. Pursuing a policy of vehicle testing and development in the heat of fierce open competition, the Heralds joined battle in the 1960 Monte Carlo Rally. A slight midday thaw makes the road treacherous, and cornering at speed a dicey business. But the Herald's all-round independent suspension helps adhesion, and Tiny Lewis has time in hand at the Mauriac control. There are no scheduled stops on the Monte, of course, and time out for refueling or a meal must be won against the set average speed. For 4 days and 3 nights over a non-stop road section of 2,300 miles, competitors fight to maintain the target speed of around 1 kilometer in every minute. When the weather is hard, a supreme test of endurance of man and machine through the snow, ice, and sub-zero temperatures of Europe in midwinter. To Le Mans in 1960 came 3 1.9-litre experimental versions of the TR to take part in what the design team considered a routine development test of the first of a new generation of Triumph sports cars. After agonizing moments in a desperately dangerous situation in the middle of the track, Peter Bolton managed to pull away and all was well. From start to finish, throughout the 24 hours, all 3 Triumphs circulated according to plan and crossed the finishing line in line abreast. 3 entered, 3 finished. A convincing display of reliability. In 1961, the Triumph team from Coventry made good its promise of the previous year and returned to Le Mans. The improved Triumphs, now designated TRS, with twin overhead camshaft 4-cylinder engines of 1985 cc's, developing 150 bhp, were approaching speeds up to 140 miles an hour on the Mulsanne Straight. With a target average of 91 miles an hour, the Triumph drivers were gaining handsomely by lapping steadily at 101. During the 24 hours at Le Mans, each driver meets his partner for but a few brief moments during their changeovers, hence the hurried exchange of technical information. At Tertre Rouge, fortunes can change in a fraction of a second, and the leading Cunningham Maserati is out of the race when lying fifth. A sad blow for Briggs Cunningham, whose Le Mans efforts seemed to win little more than admiration. Ill fortune, too, overtook the North American racing team when their Ferrari succumbed to the terrific pace set by the Rodriguez brothers. After 22 hours of desperate struggle against overwhelming odds, it was a bitter disappointment for the young Mexicans, for they were making up just enough time for it to have been possible to win. Sterling Moss, too, knows how it feels to have been beaten by misfortune. However, once again, the Triumphs continued as an unbroken team, and although there had been moments of anxiety with a broken oil seal, it was now clear that all three would easily cover the qualifying distance. In the tradition established by Triumph at Le Mans, the three TRs crossed the line together, the only complete team of three cars to do so, thereby achieving a target of speed and reliability unequaled in the race. '62 saw the welcome return of Triumphs to the limelight of open competition in the Alpine, a works team of new TR4s. Sutcliffe and Fiddler made fourth fastest time on the Viviani, and the Swiss crew, Tunner and Gretiner, came fifth, 5.5 seconds slower. The TR4s were running in the Grand Touring category, in which a higher standard of performance is of course required than from the series production machines. On the 5-mile climb to the 8,000-foot summit of the Izoard, it was the Swiss pair who beat their teammates. In an event where less than half the field finished the course, the Triumph TR4s on their first appearance took the first 3 places in their class, and Mike Sutcliffe won his Alpine Cup. With an excellent record of past achievements at Le Mans, the Triumph team returned in 1964 with an interesting production prototype, a modified Spitfire with an aerodynamic GT body. But disaster struck early in the race. Mike Rothschild, in a touch with a faster car, crashed by the Dunlop Bridge, but was saved from serious injury by the immensely strong chassis structure. Later, the French-driven Spitfire was eliminated when Manat crashed unconscious from fumes caused by previous damage in a spin. Now, everything depended on the one remaining car, shared by David Hobbs and Robbie Slaughtermarker. The atmosphere was tense as Hobbs took the Spitfire back into the battle. Throughout the race, the car had been lapping consistently at 102 miles an hour, but the responsibility in the closing stages weighs heavily upon the driver. Suddenly, it's all over. 271 laps, 2,273 miles at 94.7 miles an hour. Convincing proof of the Spitfire's speed and reliability. The 1964 Alpine Rally saw a newcomer to the Triumph team with Terry Hunter at the wheel of a Spitfire. using the same development of the 1100cc engine which had done so well at Le Mans. But on a descent such as the Col de la Cayolle, the balance and stability of the car are at a premium. Elusive seconds can be gained by judging distances to the nearest foot and using every available inch of the narrow road to keep the car swinging swiftly and smoothly on its way to yet another victory. Victory 2 in the Tour de France automobile, the last of the series of this marathon event. On the very tight circuit at Pau in the Pyrenees, the Spitfires, with their exceptional road holding, performed brilliantly in appalling conditions. And the partnership of Slottermarker on the circuits and Hunter on the hill climbs resulted in an impressive class win and 5th overall on handicap. The 1965 Monte Carlo rally encountered some of the worst weather in the history of the event. Of 237 cars that started, only 35 survived the blizzards to complete the course, and 3 of these were Spitfires. Simo Lampinen, one-time ice racing champion of Finland, was in his element on the frozen snow, whilst others were not so happy. Robbie Slottermarker hangs the tail way out in the last special test of the road section. Here, Eugen Boehringer, in a very potent Porsche, made fastest time with the Spitfires 2nd and 3rd. The dramatic final tests of the rally were fought through 12 hours of darkness on snow-packed mountain roads. Nearly 400 miles and 6 crucial flat-out special sections, 3 of them over the 5,000-foot Col de Turini. And the reward for the crowd, prepared to face the rigors of the Alps on a midwinter's night, is a concentrated display of driving technique such as is seldom seen anywhere. The 3 Spitfires finished 2nd, 3rd and 4th in the class. To finish it all in such a year was no mean achievement. In 1965, Sir Donald Stokes led the Triumph contingent back to Le Mans with 4 Spitfires entered in the 1150cc Grand Touring class to be driven by an international team of drivers. David Hobbs and the Dutchman Robbie Slottermarker. The Swiss, Jean-Jacques Tunner. The Finn, Simo Lampinen with reserve driver Roy Fidland. The Yorkshiremen Peter Bolton and Bill Bradley, and the French pair Piot and Dubois. The target, not the outright win reserved for the large capacity specialized racing machines, but the opportunity to win honor in their class, and above all, to demonstrate and develop high-speed reliability. Seconds are saved by the carefully worked-out pit routine, for no matter how brilliant the drivers and how good the car, it's the pit crews who spell success or failure at Le Mans. Peter Bolton's car had blown up on Mulsanne, and Slottermarker escaped unhurt when he crashed at 120 miles an hour during the night. Triumphs were not alone with misfortune. Every car which had made the running in the first 12 hours had been pushed away. But 2 Spitfires remained, and Director of Engineering Harry Webster gets a first-hand account of the car's performance. The presence at the circuit of the men responsible for a car's manufacture is an assurance that the lessons learned today will mean better cars on the roads of tomorrow. Of 51 starters, only 14 finished, and the 2 Spitfires were 1st and 2nd in their class, an achievement of which Sir Donald Stokes and everyone associated with the Spitfires at Le Mans may well have been proud. Continuing the policy of using the rugged proving grounds of international competition for prototype development, Triumph entered a team of 1300cc prototype Spitfire coupes in the 1965 Alpine Rally. It's on classic hill climbs like the 14-mile timed ascent of Mont Ventoux that valuable lessons of technical development are learned. Power, road holding, brakes, transmission. Controlled experiments on a proving ground are one thing, but the final test is surely in the cut and thrust of open competition, fought on and to the limit. All along the route, discerning continental enthusiasts crowd the vantage points as the rally experts display their techniques. Simo Lampinen is always very fast. And the Swiss pair, Turner and Gretner, are brilliant in this type of country. For the Triumph team, another major Alpine success to add to their ever-growing collection. Lampinen and Ahava led Turner and Gretner by a narrow margin to gain first and second in their category and, of course, the double in their class. (1966), and the Scandinavians were in their element on the Col de Lec, their old familiar of the Monte Carlo Rally. With the road as slippery and treacherous as anyone could remember, it was a snowman's paradise, and the rally cavalcade tackled it with zest. The Triumph team were giving the new 2000 its first outing on the Monte, and effectively demonstrated the remarkable road holding of the all-round independent suspension. Some were not so fortunate, but others, still in the running, pressed on with determination. The Col de Turigny was again the focal point of the final decisive stage of the rally. The leading 60 cars, in the hands now of the world's top rally drivers, stormed over the pass at 10:10.7. On the long S bend over the summit, the fast ones are doing well over 60 miles an hour, and you've got to be good to get away with that on ice. To join the select band of finishers at the victory parade is an honor indeed, and time perhaps to reflect on the invaluable store of technical experience won from past victories in the field of international rallies. Time too to take a look at the newest product of the Triumph Marque, the TR5, Britain's first production car to be fitted with petrol injection. The larger capacity 2.5-litre engine with 6 cylinders and fuel injection promises a new generation of world sports cars. By controlling the supply of petrol to each cylinder with absolute accuracy under all operating conditions, a more efficient and economic fuel system is obtained. The throttle response is immediate. No hesitation, no flat spots, precisely what the sports car enthusiast demands. And this newest addition to the long line of distinguished cars of the Triumph Marque is destined to take its place amongst the leading sports cars of the world.